You're listening to the Modern Mainframe, BMC's Intelligence-Z Optimization and Transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in mainframe DevOps, data, operations, security, and cloud. You've never mainframed like this. Hey everyone, welcome to the Modern Mainframe. I'm Matt Dallaire. Today we're talking about the modernization of mainframe observability and how open standards like OpenTelemetry are breaking down silos, accelerating incident response, and aligning mainframe data with enterprise observability strategies. Joining us today from BMC, our lead product manager, Manoj Jadwani, product development architect, Richard Nikula, and technology solutions director, the big iron guy, Jeremy Hamilton. Manoj, Richard, Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Jeremy, I'll kick things off with you. Why has mainframe data traditionally been locked in its own ecosystem? And what are the advantages of a unified approach to enterprise observability?
Man, that's one heck of a question. So, well, we'll start with, for a long time, the mainframe has been treated as a big black box and separate from the rest of an enterprise's IT environment. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. I think, it's because how it operates, the databases, the programming languages, even the interfaces are unique enough to that platform that they're not easily translatable to similar metrics or events that may occur in the distributed or cloud world. And those factors are the key definition of what a silo is. And, obviously, if the mainframe is in a silo, then that leads to all the negative consequences you can typically think of. Lack of collaboration between teams, friction between work getting done, and probably the worst of them all, waste of time, resources, and aggravation. So what the benefits of an enterprise-wide approach really brings is that, if you think about it, the environments are constantly getting more complex. Data flows nowadays from the edge computing to core applications and back again, and move through a myriad of platforms and technologies. And then when something goes wrong, it's become increasingly difficult to really understand where the problem is actually occurring, and much less, what to do about it. So when you think of an enterprise-wide observability approach, what it's really going after is getting visibility across all those different platforms, and that has to include the mainframe. The mainframe still is the back end to a lot of the business critical applications that are running. And so it really helps to break down that mainframe silo and get that end-to-end view. And I think, probably the biggest benefit would be, better business alignment. A lot of organizations have initiatives around improving system reliability or improving availability. Maybe they have some initiatives around enhancing operational efficiency or improving cost optimization. And if you just focus on the mainframe or you just focus on the distributed and cloud, you really miss out on a lot of the opportunities that are there if you have that enterprise-wide approach. Manoj or Richard, anything you would add to that?
So it's actually a good question. So today business is backed up by a complex IT landscape, and applications flow from distributed cloud to mainframe. So no activity is actually happening in silos. So unified observability approach brings all that telemetry data onto a single common view using the business context and the correlation. So actually you with the unified view you can do the correlation across the platform, how the application flow happens, and during the issue triage situations you can reduce the mean time to detect and mean time to resolve the problem, and it becomes a single point of truth for all the resources of all the enterprise observability stakeholders to talk in the common language. So that's brings in the importance of having the unified observability approach. That's my perspective.
Oh man, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you think about it, one of the old sayings that I really like is if the mainframe sneezes, the rest of the organization gets sick. A small slowdown on the mainframe can spawn off hundreds of alerts and alarms all across the environment. And on the flip side of the coin, a major issue in the distributed space may not even register on the mainframe. So, like you said, being able to get that unified view is really the only way to get a handle on what's happening in the environment. You got to include everything, including the mainframe.
I agree, Jeremy. Yeah. Richard, anything you want to add?
Well, I think the key that you brought in is the need for a unified approach, right? It is not a mainframe approach. It's not a distributed approach. It's a unified approach. Ultimately, to be able to see where the problems are occurring, right? That's the key when dealing with basically applications that are enterprise. So, yep, hit it right on.
Richard, I believe you've worked with OpenTelemetry, or OTel, in both distributed and mainframe systems. What is OpenTelemetry, and why is it important to enterprise observability?
Yeah, so I certainly worked with OpenTelemetry for quite a while, and it stems out of a lot that we were just talking about, the complexity of the environments that were there. So for many years, the need to be able to see the systems and see what was going on has been there, but most of the solutions were proprietary and required customers to buy into a vendor to get their solutions. And of course, that had a myriad of problems related to it. And as part of the observability push, the need for an open standard sort of evolved. And OpenTelemetry is an open source standard basically for collecting those key elements that you need for being able to see your systems, right? So metrics, being able to capture the data that's going on, logs, which of course we've all known for quite a while, the importance of the logs in the systems, and then traces, being able to trace across the different systems. So that it evolved as a standard open source set of tooling that anybody can use on any platform. And it allowed you that ability to basically collect data from anywhere. And I think one of the key things that happened is that a lot of the vendors on the varying systems have bought into OpenTelemetry. So not only does that standard exist, but in fact, there's a pretty high adoption rate that goes on for OpenTelemetry at present. I mean, it's still evolving, but it's certainly hit that point now where it's pretty common to, at least, for key components to be able to say, yes, we can emit OpenTelemetry data. And so now you get all of those systems able to produce that, including the mainframe. Then you have that enterprise observability that you need to be able to see what's going on, right? So that's really where the OpenTelemetry evolved from, was that need to be able to see these really complicated systems, but at the same time be vendor neutral, because nobody wanted to lock into a specific vendor only solution.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I have been to IBM Tech Exchange, Share, GS UK, and the amount of people talking about open telemetry in the last year has just grown exponentially. And to your point, the adoption, it's been so quick on the mainframe that I've been fascinated by it. I saw DevOps, and it took DevOps a few years to get rolling and really start happening on the mainframe. But this observability topic has really grown like wildfire. Any thoughts of why that might have happened?
Well, I think part of it, certainly from if you look at the history, right? I mean, again, OpenTelemetry itself is not new. It's been around for a little bit. The key, I think, again, was that the different systems have implemented it, right? It's proven its worth, right? That it's able to fill the need of being able to get visibility. And then, of course, there's a there are a lot of platforms that support it, right? So again, OpenTelemetry is pushing the data, but you need to be able to visualize it, right? So there are a number of tools that allow you to visualize that data. And then those have proven that, hey, we can reduce the time to when there's a problem. But one of the blank spots in that picture was the mainframe. And that's something that, fairly recently now we've had the mainframe data starting to now play its role in that mix. And of course, that it was almost a necessary sort of missing piece that as soon as it showed up, people went, oh, yeah, I like that. I see how I can get the value of that. It fits right in with the rest of our strategy. Let's go, right? So that's definitely was one of the factors. Manoj, would you add to that?
Yeah, and I would like to add from the BMC perspective, like what we have done. So, like BMC data stream for ops is our first one of the products where we are enabling streaming of ZOS matrices, the coming out from our AMI ops product, DB2, AMI ops for DB2, AMI ops for IMS, Kicks, Java, all the AMI ops monitor. So now they will be streaming the data in the OpenTelemetry compliant format. What the impact of this will be, like that the different personas on the enterprise observability, I mean SRE, app devs, operations team, mainframe operation team, mainframe SME person, they will see the single source of truth. They will collaborate better in their job, and it's like we are giving them a single pane of glass. So it's not now like we are including the mainframe matrices, mainframe operational data to the enterprise observability. So it's just not the mainframe data or the cloud data, it's the enterprise data. So cross correlation of the matrices across the platform. OpenTelemetry is simplifying them. It's providing the common language for all the personas who are supporting the enterprise to be more productive while working on the enterprise.
Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty interesting. So when I think about it, I think about what we've done at BMC. It's almost, like taking the metrics on the mainframe and putting it into a format, for lack of a better word, or at least translating it into a form that can then be related to stuff coming in from the other platforms. Am I close on that?
Yes, Jeremy. Yeah. So you will have a
Okay.
single pane of glass, a single dashboard, enterprise dashboard, where you will see the system utilization metrics of your Linux platform or your Kubernetes environment, along with the mainframe data side by side. So what is happening in your environment? You can actually correlate it where the CPU utilization is high, where the delay is actually happening. So all the data is actually visually visible to you, to correlate and to dive if you want a deeper insight on that. If you are actually observing a problem, you can quickly reach out to the SME of that platform and get the diagnosis initiated for the particular platform.
Now I'm just curious. Now you both of you, Richard and Manoj, you guys have piqued my curiosity. And this is a question that I get all the time from customers. They're currently using Dynatrace, which is OTel enabled.
Mhm.
And then now BMC's monitors are OTel enabled.
Uh-huh.
What can I do with that?
Well, I think I know that I think there's a couple of points there. So one thing about OTel is OTel, as we've talked about, covers all of the observability across all of the platforms, right? Monitoring metrics, logs, and traces, right? So just because you consume OTel data does not necessarily mean you consume all three of those, right? So if you are Splunk, for example, you would say, oh, well, we do OTel, but you're probably going to be doing mostly logs, right? You might do the others, but you know, you have your sort of strength. And Dynatrace is primarily focused on, they're the original APM solution, right?
APM, right.
They're one of the vendors that, in fact, was part of the original problem that you bought into Dynatrace, and you basically had to instrument your apps in a Dynatrace way. So by supporting OpenTelemetry, that allowed them to now not have that lock-in anymore, right? So the key now is that even though they're a vendor who previously would have locked you in, they're now neutral. just like anybody else, right? So they're one of the front ends that you can use.
Okay.
So now, from that perspective, that means that data that we provide, right, can now be consumed by Dynatrace, which means you can create dashboards that include mainframe data as well as your distributed data. So, it's like Manoj said, you want to compare CPU time. Well, previously you would have seen CPU time for a Linux system. Now you can see CPU time on the mainframe system. You want to be able to, and maybe before, right? And in fact, it's more of a general problem, is that before, when there was an observability problem, somebody would say, well, we can see that it got over onto this system over here, and then it did an MQ call, or it did a REST call. What they couldn't see was, what did it do after that, right? Where did it go, right? So now, with some of the recent things that IBM has added, we can now see that it actually went to the mainframe and it went into a Kix, into a Kix transaction, or it was an MQ message and it got processed here, right? We can now have that visibility, which, when you combine that with the data that we're providing in terms of metrics and insight into those regions, you can also get another layer down. So it's allowing you to go even a little bit further down that chain and say, oh, I see it went into Kix, but I'm showing that Kix is currently having, storage related problems, or MQ has got a buffer problem, or, and so on and so on. So the key now is that we provide that insight to them. They're still using the same tool, right? The people that are using the Dynatrace are still using their same tool. We're not saying, convert over to anything else. They're still using it, but now they have insight into the mainframe.
Awesome. Awesome answer.
So we've mentioned Dynatrace. What are some of the other observability platforms that our listeners may be using that can work with OTel data?
You've got Grafana, Prometheus, which are kind of hand in hand, Splunk, the Elasticsearch, Instana from IBM,
Datadog.
Datadog. Yep. And there's a lot of startup observability platforms as well, right? There's one of the things that the OpenTelemetry enables is for anybody to basically be able to consume it, right? It's an open format, which means, that actually opens the opportunity for vendors to build solutions, because they're not in the data collecting business. They're in the data management, data presentation, data analysis business. They can focus on that, rather than before they had to actually put a lot of investment into data collection.
Manoj, can you talk a little bit about modernizing mainframe observability without making wholesale changes to the environment? I'd imagine you'd want to incorporate OpenTelemetry without too much disruption.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question, Matt. So we have been hearing a lot from the customers also. Do they need to buy new tools? How all this observability piece from the mainframe will look? So my answer to this is, modernizing doesn't mean you have to buy new fancy tools, which you are seeing in the market. The point is the operational data that mainframe is generating. So how that data can be leveraged, and that can be connected to the enterprise observability piece, or the open formats which we are talking about, open telemetry or the APIs. They provide the mainframe data to the enterprise observability, and then there are the observability platforms that enterprises are using, like Grafana, Splunk, Elastic. They just need to integrate that data so that it is available to the SRE to visualize it and to perform the analytics they want to do on the mainframe of the mainframe operational data. So along with the cloud data, along with your different platform data, you'll also have the mainframe data on the same enterprise level dashboards. So you could get a deeper understanding of what's happening on your enterprise. So modernizing is just about extending or connecting mainframe operational data, not replacing anything, just making your mainframe as a first class native citizen of your enterprise observability strategy.
So Jeremy, you spent a good amount of time talking to customers about their systems and their needs. Can you share any examples of what unified observability looks like in action?
Yeah, no, I just 2 weeks ago, I was at a large retailer and we were, talking about what they were doing on the platform or the mainframe, and they were one of their initiatives was to go to end-to-end observability. And so I asked them a simple question, what happens when a problem occurs in your environment? And they took me through the process. And, it's very similar to most customers I speak to. A problem occurs. The first, let's say a user application is slowing down. A help desk ticket's generated, distributed, or a cloud person looks at the help desk ticket. Maybe they're a level one operator and says, well, this isn't my problem. And they throw it to the mainframe. Mainframe's always to blame, right? And so the mainframe people get the ticket and they look at it and they like, well, that's not our problem. And they toss it back to the distributed folks. And next thing you know, everyone's on the war room call, or as I like to call it, the call of innocence, where everyone's on this call and their objective is to get off the call as quickly as possible to prove that their part of the environment isn't what the offending piece is. And as we were talking through this with the retailer, you know, they started the light bulb started going on, how much time and effort was being wasted just figuring out where the problem was occurring. So, another customer I'm working with, they haven't got complete end to end yet, but they've started incorporating the mainframe into their overall observability strategy and visibility strategy. So now whenever a problem occurs, they can at least, at the very minimum, determine whether it's a mainframe problem or a distributed problem. Or, the third option is the network problem, or maybe a certificate went bad. But they can at least narrow it down that far. And it saves them a tremendous amount of time. And to them, that's a win. But to what Manoj and Richard were talking about, being able to really dive down and understand, get to that root cause analysis, who is the likely offender in this issue? That would just be, a huge leap in the right direction. So, I've seen a broad spectrum, but that's typically the way the conversations go. Richard or Manoj, have you guys had conversations like that as well?
Yep. So we were talking to one of the customers. So their use case was, so in India we have this application called like Unified Payment Interface. So similar type of application they were using, and that's a very critical application for their country, I'll say. So their use case was like how they can quickly identify if some kind of latency is happening in any of the platform, like the services this application is calling. So they want to come up with such a dashboard where they can get the end-to-end visibility of that application along with the system addresses and the other things that are like the activities that are happening at that point of time. So people are in this observability journey and they want to create such dashboards which can easily identify issues proactively and help them to understand where the problem is, and they can reach out, like reduce the mean time to detect the problem and mean time to resolve the problem. So that's what they want to really achieve using this framework.
Now, how would you compare and contrast what the observability we're talking, with open telemetry, et cetera, with, let's say, an ITSM type solution where a help desk ticket is generated and then, you try to attach as much information to it. I guess it's just tracking the help desk ticket. So ours would be more about tracking the current state of the environment compared to what's normal, or how would you define that delineation there?
I think they go together. Um, this ITSM is still going to be involved in these cases, right? So, I mean, I think that already existed to a point, right? If a Kix region goes down or an MQ system is having a problem and you generate an alert or something is generated of that, that's going to go into an ITSM system and somebody's going to be alerted to that. So now, yes, there's a problem and it's affecting the mainframe, okay, they're aware of it, they're trying to get it resolved. The difference there is that that's kind of more of the traditional approach of I'm just trying to solve the problems that are occurring. And when we get into the observability side, it's about understanding the impact of those problems to the applications, right? And so again, yes, an ITSM system can build, certainly with, you have a great CMDB, you can build interrelationships and all of those sort of things, which we've been doing for a number of years. But that's more of the visualization and the awareness of where those applications exist. With OTel, we're actually getting now more down into the actual applications, right? So we can actually see the impact that a Kix region is having. It may not be down, it may just be slow, or maybe it's an application problem. Maybe they've rolled out a new version of their application and it's generating, application errors. They have that level of visibility. So the observability angle is a lot more about understanding the actual application environment that's there and what's happening. And so they go together. There's no doubt that you're still going to have tickets that are going to get raised and you're going to still have people resolving those tickets. That's still going to happen. It's just now a question of, can you identify more, what's triggering those problems and what's the
Right.
impact of them?
Yep, I agree.
Okay, to close out the episode, I'd like to get everyone's thoughts on what's next for mainframe observability. Richard, I'll start with you.
Yeah. So again, I think as we've sort of hinted throughout this, right, we are just reaching the point where the mainframe is starting to be sort of a primary player into that space. So being able to provide, the full components of OTel, the metrics, the logs, and the traces are going to become increasingly important for that. And then being able to feed that data into, the other systems that are, starting to come out as well. So there, certainly some AI related things that you're going to see related to that. And, being able to leverage that data to be able to more quickly get to the, to the source of problems.
Manoj?
Richard has mostly covered our roadmap, like what we are trying to do, how we want to leverage OpenTelemetry with our AmiOps products. And I just want to say, right, so the future of observability is not a silo mainframe, but more connected mainframe. So for us, we are looking OTel as a reach to the enterprise observability, and that's how we want to utilize it.
And Jeremy, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would go back to something that Richard said a little bit ago that really struck me and caused a light bulb to go on. We said that the data collectors will collect the data, and then the observability platforms are the consumers, and it allows those vendors on both sides to get really good at what they do. And so I'm looking at the data collection side, and the better metrics that you can find, the faster you can find those anomalies, the deeper of the anomalies you can find will prove to be super valuable, because the higher quality data that you feed into an observability platform, the better that observability platform will be able to use that data. On the flip side, on the observability platform consumer side, what they're able to do with that data is going to, and going forward, is it's going to continue to grow. Being able to apply AI and ML to metrics, logs, and traces, being able to marry application data, application changes, application, the nuances of how an application runs on the platform, how that runs in the distributed and cloud world, and bringing those together and truly start to eliminate some of the silos that exist. I think the future is truly unbridled at this point, and I'm looking forward to see what both the data collection side and the observability platforms have to offer.
Well, this has been a great discussion. Richard, Jeremy, Manoj, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank
Been
you.
fun.
And thank you to everyone listening. I'll include some links to more information in the show notes, including the December 10th BMC AMI Tech Talk extend mainframe observability with OpenTelemetry to Splunk and other enterprise platforms, where Jeremy, Manoj, and Richard will go a bit deeper into support of OpenTelemetry and BMC AMI data stream for ops. So be sure to check that out. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Modern Mainframe. Take care. You're listening to the Modern Mainframe, BMC's Intelligent Z Optimization and Transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in mainframe DevOps, data, operations, security, and cloud. You've never mainframed like this.